Supposed Gloves here, and this is the 27th video in the Kontakt from the ground up tutorial series. And if I ever do another tutorial series with Kontakt or another plugin that starts with a K, I'm gonna have a problem because I'll be saying Kontakt all the time. All right, here we go. So today we're gonna be talking about zone envelopes. And we've covered these guys, so now it's time to talk about zone envelopes. And zone envelopes are cool because they let you modulate parameters via envelopes, and I'm assuming you have a basic knowledge of envelopes. We talked about it earlier. They just tell signals how to behave, and we'll get more into envelopes when we talk about modules and things. But for now, we're just going to let envelopes, just basic knowledge, control us for now. And I have been working on a glockenspiel, actually, and I guess sort of a teaser. So I've got this glockenspiel I've recorded, and I think it sounds pretty good. I tried stereo miking it, so it's got some weird panning on certain things. But, yep, I'm not redoing it. So, if anything, we'll just use some stereo effects to fix it. But I kind of like the panning thing. It's kind of cool now. It's like a stereo image automatically. You can see the panning, too, very clearly here. But we're going to talk about zone envelopes, and they allow you to control parameters of your group effects. So I have a morph thing, and I could modulate the volume or the panning, or I can modulate the morphing or the amount. Some things you can't modulate. I've discovered this. It says in the manual, because I was looking this up, because it was pretty cool options, but then certain things wouldn't let me do it, that you should be able to, but I just can't figure it out. So maybe if one of you guys figures it out. I was messing around with the twang effect. But anyways, so an envelope, we've already talked about what envelopes are in the past. So if we want to add an envelope to a zone, what's neat is you can add an envelope to a specific zone. So I could have one on just a louder version of this sample and not on the softer version of it, which doesn't even look like there's something there, but there is. If we go, you can hear it. It's truly soft. So let's see what exactly does that mean. So we can click volume, and it just added a red line with a square. This is our volume envelope. And so we can bring the volume up over time by right clicking, or if you're on a Mac, I believe it's command click. And then you can bring it back down again. So it'll get really soft really quick. And you can change the curve by clicking on the little round circle and moving it up or down. You must be in, I don't know, regular mode. You can't have this pencil button selected. It does something else. We'll talk about it soon. And so if we play our note now, if we go like this, our volume will hit a wall, as you can hear. And so that is pretty cool. Whoops, don't want to do that quite yet. Anyway, so we could do this. And you can already hear on something as simple as a glockenspiel, you get some really cool effects already. It's just like, it's already blowing our minds. Like, we can already mess with texture, and this is a really simple thing. This isn't like a drum loop or anything. So that's a powerful tool right there. And we can actually, now when you add an envelope, so you see we've got our volume envelope, and by clicking here, we can go through all our active envelopes on any zone. So you could have like 13 envelopes on the same zone. And now we can delete the envelope if we don't want it. Let's say, oh, we don't want that. So we click delete, and it'll say really delete. And we're like, yep, get that sucker out of my face. And it does that. Now let's add our volume envelope back. We don't want an envelope loop quite yet. That's controlled with this button here. And so if we right click, we add a few points. One thing that happens is you actually add a modulation source for this envelope. And to go visit the source of it, we've talked about modulation. This is little MOD. Talked about them a little bit in the previous parts of this series. But we're going to get more into these things in detail later. But to go see the source modulation, you just click this little arrow, and it will take us to the other various options associated with it. So it'll say zone envelope. And so you can change things here. Now, this is important because sometimes you might be using this to modulate the cutoff of a filter. And if your thing is down here, it can only modulate up to this amount. If you want it to modulate all the way, you got to put it at 100%. So that's just so you know. And these little boxes will take you back to their respective controls. So bang, we're back up here. Neat ways of moving through Kontakt quickly. I don't know if you can hear that, but my brother just started playing the bagpipes. So if you hear bagpipes, that's what that is. We can add volume and panning. Those two are already options. So if you hit pan, we can add panning. Gosh dang it, this loop envelope, that's caused by right clicking and dragging. We'll talk about this later though. So if you just right click, these things pop up, and now our panning has been changed. So if we hit our note, you can hear it move. It gets kind of soft pretty fast, but that's what that is. We'll turn the volume up on this a little bit actually. Here. So you can hear it doing its thing. So that's what that is. And you can switch between the volume envelope and the panning envelope. But let's say, oh no, I didn't want to do the panning envelope. And so what do? Well, you go to delete and it's gonzo. I think we already said that. Now this add last touched, what is that? Well, this is where it gets cool. You can go down to the group effects, and for most of them, you can add an effect. So let's say we want to add, let's see here. Let's add distortion to our effect. And we have drive. Oh man, we want a lot of drive. And actually, this recording happened. I used a stereo field as experimenting. I'm not redoing it. If you don't like the stereo, I think it's cool because as you move around, it moves in your stereo fields. That's pretty cool. But if you don't like it, you can just stereo pan it later when I release this. But we have our drive now. And if you look, if we just click on effects, it'll say add drive. If it says add last touch, that means you can't use an envelope to modulate this. So you can't modulate that, you can't modulate that, but you can modulate the drive. If we go to our, I have this other filter here, but I'm not using it currently. We can click on that. Oh, a morph and amount. We can use envelopes. So we're going to go to our drive. And the cool thing is you could put an envelope just on this zone to tell the drive how to behave. So you could do each one of these individually. It's like, I know, it's crazy. So what do? You click that and you click add drive, and bang, this envelope is now for drive. And you can see right here, we've had distortion added to our list. And so we can say, oh, I want the distortion to go down really fast. Maybe we just want a really hard attack. And this could be a way to deal with that. We could even make it even shorter. We could even zoom in here. And so we do something like that. Whoops. We go on like that. So that's a way of doing things. And we could even bring it back up. So you can hear things doing. Now, one thing I did not clarify, and I'm not sure how this is exactly, is if the modulation source, because it shows our stereo image here, and I'm not sure if this affects just the, I'm assuming this is in the middle and this is 0 and this is 100, but I might be wrong. This may be 100 for this one. And no, well, I don't know. I'm going with this is representative of 0 to 100 from top to down. If I'm wrong, let me know. I don't believe I'm wrong, but you never know. You could be wrong about stuff. So anyways, you can use an envelope to control that. So we could start it off with no distortion, and we can move it up to distortion over time. And you right click to get rid of a point. You right click to add a point. So let's try that. Let's try something like this. Oh, and we see our drive's already at 47. So we want to take that to 0. And if we want our drive to start up, and you can see our drive responding to it as we do this. And so now you can really hear it taking effect, because this can only, it's like what I said before, this can only modulate as according to where you've set your parameters. So if you put it here, that's going to be the starting point. This also confirms my suspicion that this is 0 and this is 100. So now that that's all cleared up, you can right click to get rid of points again. So that's how you can do that. And I think you already see the potential here. Now let's say we turn our grid on, because this is a drum loop of some kind. So if we zoom out here. All right, so now that we've added drive, we know about envelopes, we know about deleting envelopes and all these wonderful things. You see I'm on a different note now. And if we click add drive, it'll add the drive for us. And now we have these other selections. Now let's say we've got our grid on. So bang, we've got our grid. And this grid allows us to do some nifty things. First off, if we have points that were not made, like let's say the grid is not on, and we had some points, those grids do not snap to the point. But if we move them, they will snap to the nearest line. And we can move them up and down on the line. So that's a really nifty feature. If you need it to be synchronized with your loop, that way it like lines up time-wise. And it's really nifty because now we can create sequences. Like we can have a point here and a point here and have the drive low, and we can have the point here and the point here. And we can change the curve to, whoops. All right, well, I just lost that sample. There it is. We're back. Which is this? This is the B flat. So you can hear that going on. But let's talk about now that we have that. We have our grid on and we snapped it. This pencil selection allows us to do straight curves. And so this is really nifty for things like this. And you can do it without, no, I'm not sure if you can or can't. Nope, you cannot use the pencil tool outside of the grid. So you can also draw curves like so. So that's really cool. So you could do something like that, like this. And they actually have a randomized envelope option, which allows you to do this. Now, this is similar to basically what a sample and hold does. It'll hold the variables at different rates. So if you've ever wanted a really good visual for a sample and hold, this is a really great one. But except for usually sample and hold, they'll tell you what parameters. It's generally associated. Never mind. You know what? Go watch the massive sample and hold thing. I have a video for it. So we have this, and if we turn our pencil tool off, we can change our curves again in the points. We can just as easily change the points with them on like this. But if you want to change like curves and you want to get really fancy, that's an option. You can also, if you right click anywhere on your envelope and drag, you'll introduce an envelope loop. This will loop. It's similar to the way these loops over here work, except for this will loop only a specific part of your envelope, individual of all your other loops. So this is like a totally separate loop for whatever you're using. So you could have like an envelope loop on your distortion, but not on your volume. You could just do all manner of coolness, okay? So let's turn our pencil tool on and make this so that it starts off at nothing and turns on. So no distortion, distortion. And if we hit our note, you'll hear it just looping through this part. It'll ignore the completely rest of our envelope. So we hit it, and you hear going do, 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 clearly doing our envelope. Now, that's cool and all. And there are some cool features that come along. If you want to change the envelope, you have to grab down here. Now, let's say you want to turn your pencil tool off. And if you right-click anywhere on your envelope, not right-click, what am I saying? By the way, this is how you turn that on and off. A right-click turns the loop on. If you double-click anywhere on your envelope, whoops, it closes your waveform view. I'm just having the hardest time doing things. There we go. If you click and drag, it will select parts of your envelope. And it's really neat because, and you can do this without the grid as well. So select, select. You do not need to double-click. Just found that out. And you can copy that, and you can click somewhere else, and you can paste it. Bang. And it puts that section of your grid, regardless of how big the paste is. So if you only copy this value, so you hit copy, and you come over here, and you hit paste, it'll put that value in for you. You can also hit cut, and it will remove that value. So we can hit cut, and it will interpolate between the nearest data points that were not affected. And then of course, we have the paste option. So those are some really great ways of moving that around. Now, if we go back to our envelope loop option, so we have our loop. Let's say we have a sample loop going on. Let's say we've introduced a sample loop to 1, and we've moved it over here. And we want our loop envelope, for our envelope to mirror our sample. So if we've got a sample that starts and then it loops through our material, we really want it to line up, because that could become a real issue if you've got an infinitely looping sample and the envelope is doing all sorts of weird crap. So what you can do is you can do copy current sample loop, and it will bang. It will look for the loop that you have selected. So if you have like 6 selected, 6 is the whole thing. And we don't, even though 1's active, 6 is also active. And we have that one selected because it's yellow. And we go down here, we click it, and bang, it switches to 6. But if we go back to 1, bang, it switches to 1. So those are some options you have there. I personally don't want any of these on currently because I don't need them, just demonstrating things. So that's how your sample loop works. And the randomized envelope applies for the entire envelope, and you have to be using the grid and snap for this to work. Just so you know. That's the only way that works. So once you have all this figured out, now you might want to say, what is this? Envelope follows playback speed. So when we have that selected, if you're using direct from disk as I am, and you're up pitching a sample by an octave, so let's say you're taking this note and you're making it an octave higher, so we went from here to here, but it's the same sample. Well, your playback speed by definition of like regular sample rate would double. So if you were to do time stretching the regular way, you just squish it. You divide the amount of time happening in half, and that would raise the pitch therefore by twice. So, or up an octave, I guess is more accurately. Twice is fine too. Anyways, so what just happened was now your envelope, though, if you have this off, will still go through its modulations that you've set independently of your upstretching. But if you follow playback speed, even if you stretch something to be really slow, your envelope will play slow. Faster, it'll play faster. So you may want this or may not want this. All these things, just think of the amount of possibilities. You could be doing things with drum loops. Maybe you want reverb on just one particular part of a drum loop, and you can do that completely using these options. You just grab a drum loop. Let's do it right now, we do not want to save that. So I'll come over here to Opposing Gloves, Hi-Hat Heaven. All right, real quick, another cool thing you can do with Kontakt, just demonstrating this principle. So I've got a drum loop loaded up here. I've already sliced it up. It sounds like this. I mean, at the current rate, I didn't do everything, according to the previous tutorials. I'm just loading it up to show a demonstration. And I want to change this first sample independent of the rest of the sample. And it's really nifty. So if we go to our group effects, maybe we want to, and we're going to get into more complicated stuff, especially with these effects as we go later on. Maybe we want a tape saturator on. And with it on, it sounds like this. And let's do a different effect. Let's go to filters, a low pass filter. So we've got a filter on it. And you see you can't really hear it. Well, we're going to add cutoff. So we've added the cutoff filter, and we're going to turn our pencil tool on. And for everything else, we're going to have it just on. But for this first loop, or you know what, we're going to go like this. So just this part of the sample is going to be low passed. And we'll even do it again over here. And so now it's been rhythmically set up for that. So let's play our loop. Oh, that's interesting how it loops back. We don't want that. And let's put that there. Let's make it slower. Huh. The loop ends right there. That's strange. Let's move this point up to the top. Oh, you know what? This is where the envelope loop would come in handy. So we'll add an envelope loop to our whole thing. So it'll loop through our envelope. And now we'll play it. And it works, and you have exactly what you want. And now hopefully you've seen an application, so you get the idea. You can start adding all crazy things. You can start using send effects to even modulate things like reverb on specific stuff. So that's really cool. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. Like, comment, and subscribe. And have a blessed day.